gods around the world, welcome to another installment in the Guy Stuff Adventures. I am your host, Anthony Claiborne, joined as always by my brother, John the Red Man, SB. We got a special guest, Spirit Fingers. We got a special guest tonight we're going to talk about, and I say tonight because it's like 11 Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast and all that fun stuff.
Like 7 hours past Anthony's bedtime.
Yeah, right. So if you're listening to this on one of the podcast mediums, thank you. If you're watching this on Facebook, then I'm just wondering how this video got through the censors, but we're glad you are. So share with a friend.
Yes.
So
subscribe, click the notification bells, all those things.
Yeah.
All things we're supposed to say.
All those things. We are delighted to have with us once again Dr. Louis Marcos of Houston Baptist University.
The myth, the man, the legend, right here.
The myth, the man, the legend. He has forgot more than me and John know put together.
Exactly.
And we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff tonight or today, wherever you are in the space-time continuum, including his new book. But first, I'm gonna throw it over to John and let him just wrap up.
Well, see, this is this book. I want to talk about this book that Dr. Louis just put out. But I've always come back because my heart is like just so pulled to Tolkien. I got to pull back to Tolkien a little bit with Dr. Louis because I'm about halfway through Return of the King again, and so I'm like, just in that Tolkien mindset, man. I've been so enthralled with it the past few weeks, and so I'm just so thankful to have somebody here, man. That's there. My wife gets tired of hearing it every night on Audible, but I'm like, no, I'm listening to this, and there's so many things that are pulled from it for our Christian walk and the defiance of evil and all those kind of things, and. So yeah, man, I'm excited to have Dr. Louis back on
Lord
here.
of the Rings right now. Just took him through the Silmarillion, so I'm always ready to talk about Tolkien.
See, I hadn't gotten to Silmarillion yet. Is it worth? I mean, you're teaching, of course, it's worth reading, but is it like? How do you wade through it? I've heard it's so weighty, it's hard to wade through it.
It is heavy. There's not a whole lot of dialogue. It's just on and on, lots and lots of names, but it gives you the whole backstory. I mean, if you read, book 1 of Lord of the Rings. And that part where Aragorn is telling the story of Beren and Luthien in about a page. Well, if you read that and you're just blown away, you got to go back and read. I mean, if you're a little bit intimidated by the Silmarillion, you can buy, because, Christopher Tolkien put out individual books, The Children of Húrin, Beren and Luthien. Those are a little bit more accessible if you want to read those. But I will tell you that oftentimes the Christian subtext is actually a bit stronger in the Silmarillion than it is in Lord of the Rings, because he's dealing with first things. He's dealing with creation and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's all about elves. Now, there are no hobbits in the Silmarillion, so that's why it's kind of heavy.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But if you want the backstory of all those elves and all the things they did, and it's amazing. One of them, Turin, he's like Oedipus. Every taboo sin ends up falling on that poor guy's feet, and he's usually not really guilty. He does it in ignorance. But to get a sense of the age of Tolkien, it's worth it. You got to keep going back and just get in the right mood. Now, if you're somebody that likes to listen, you can buy the Silmarillion on CDs.
Okay.
And the guy that does it does a great job. I mean, he just has a resonant voice. And I remember when the kids were young, took a long car trip to the U.S. and we listened to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And afterwards, my son is just like, names, I think I broke their minds from all those names. And the guy that does it, Martin something, really gets the feel of it.
Wow.
It's kind of like reading the boring parts of the Old Testament. You're not allowed to skip. You can skip in Tolkien, but you can't skip in the Bible, or you're going to hell, right?
Exactly. You can't. The genealogy you can't skip.
You got to exegete that completely.
So that's a question. That's a question I have. Like, so what do you think about, like, as a literature professor? And I think I know what your answer is, but I want to be like, test and see. The balance of, you think it's better to read, or is it just equally stimulating to listen? Like, what do you think?
It really depends on how good a listener you are. I find if I'm listening, well, first of all, if I listen to a book on tape when I'm driving, it makes me sleepy. But I'm missing. My son, on the other hand, is an incredible oral learner, and he picks it all up. So it kind of depends on what kind of a listener you are. If you can really absorb, you're getting a lot of it. And especially when you're dealing with Lewis and Tolkien, that's storytelling. I mean, it's supposed to be heard out loud. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. If you're doing Shakespeare, you will get the drama of it.
Yeah.
But you're obviously going to miss a lot of the intricacies of the poetry. But that's the same case if you go to watch the play. Right? I mean, poetry, especially poetry, is meant to be heard. So it's not a bad idea to hear it, to experience it, and then maybe go back and read it or read certain parts of it. But it's a skill. You must be good at listening. You can focus when you listen.
All right, you mentioned Shakespeare. I want to test your Shakespeare knowledge.
Okay.
How you gonna test this man's a freaking?
I'm sure he's gonna get this. I'm sure he's gonna get this. I'm gonna quote a Shakespeare play. This is a little bit of an unusual quote, but I bet I have full confidence that you will nail what play this is from. Like first try, no problem.
Anthony's gonna misquote it anyway, so it's all right. So,
are you ready? Are you ready? Quarrel, I'll back thee.
Oh, Quarrel! I remember that. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. Quarrel.
That was a redneck play. His name was Squirrel, and he was just saying, "Hey, Quarrel, I'm gonna come back to you." That's what that was from. That was like.
Unless it's in Henry V. It's familiar. Quarrel.
Romeo and Juliet. Mercutio says it.
What? Man, how gonna be easy on that one? Like
a character named Quarrel.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, the character is not named Quarrel. Quarrel as in fight.
See, you just kind of threw out obscure, like.
Okay.
That's like saying.
It is late. Right? It is late. But like, see, when I came through school and we did Romeo and Juliet, us guys, right? We're like Eastern North Carolina. That's like the one line in the whole play that we picked up on.
Didn't you like the part about I thumb my nose at you?
Yeah.
I do not thumb my nose at you, but I do thumb my nose. Right?
Yeah. There's so much.
I tell you that
in there.
the coolest, like I never really got into Shakespeare a lot. I wanted to feign like, oh, I like Shakespeare because I wanted to be like all heady and stuff, but I hated it. But what freaking what got me, and I was like, man, this is awesome. When they redid the Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh yeah.
That was actually, I was like, yeah.
By my head, here come the Capulets.
By my heel, I care not.
Follow me close. Gentlemen, good day. A word with one of you?
I was like, it's cool. And it was like
they got their guns that has what was it? Sword on it, or
yes.
It was. I was like, that's awesome. I actually like it, man.
Some of it works. That Baz Luhrmann guy. Some of it does work. Hey, you can watch Taming of the Shrew with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton going at each other. That's pretty funny.
Really? I have to watch that.
The best of them all, though, you've got to see Henry V by Ken Branagh.
Really?
That is so intense. Oh my gosh. The St. Crispin's Day speech.
Yeah.
We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. Come on, you've got it there. Good stuff. Every man wants to pronounce it like they're in the movie 300. The guy is Greek and Scottish. What's that all about? He keeps changing his accent throughout that movie.
I have to watch that. I've never read the book. Or the play or whatever. I've never read it. I've never seen it. I've never seen the movie. I've never seen anything. I've heard that's the St. Crispin's Day speech, but I've never watched it. So I have to sit down. That's a guy stuff homework for all of us is to go watch.
Hey, here's a good guy stuff quote. It comes from Julius Caesar. A coward dies 1,000 deaths. A brave man dies but once. Right? because you're the coward. You're holding on. You're holding the brave man. Yeah, this is it. We go.
And I am named Mark Anthony. So
what's that?
What?
And I am named Mark Anthony.
Oh, I guess I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Your first name's Mark?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
You got the Anthony, and of course his name is really Anthony without the H.
Exactly,
Yeah,
Anthony.
right.
And it's Mark Anthony.
And if you want to study Hamlet, just watch Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, that's true. I heard about that.
Really?
And by the way, if you do see the old 50s movie version of Julius Caesar, do you know who plays Mark Anthony?
No.
I do not.
It is played by, of all people, what's his name? Marlon Brando.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Marlon Brando played everything.
Marlon Brando.
Yes, he did. Marlon
joking.
Brando was the Mando.
He played everything.
You guys are trying to confuse me because you know that Jonathan's box says Anthony on it, and Anthony's box says Jonathan on it.
I'll switch it out. I'll switch it out.
With my mind.
Just be glad that's all it says.
That's all. Okay, that's good.
I'll switch it out. Hang on a second. Mark. How do you do Mark? Let's see.
Because he has misbehaved before, Dr. Marcos.
Mark Anthony, like you're going past the speed of sound. There we go.
Yeah, that ship sailed.
Well, Jonathan, you should be giving yourself, a name like Aragorn or Theoden or something like that.
Gimli.
There you go.
My ox.
You gotta give Peter Jackson credit. That amazing speech Aragorn gives when they stand before the Black Gate.
Oh, yeah.
Someday the race of men may fall, but that day is not today. They wrote that speech. That's not in Tolkien. I think Tolkien would have liked it. It's a great speech. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah. And the other one, what is it that Gimli says? It's one of my son's favorite lines. He says, "Well, let's see what we have. Chance of success very small. Chance of death very high. What are we waiting for?" I mean,
I love that. Love that. Yeah, that is awesome. There's
pure guy stuff right there.
Exactly.
There is. There's so much. We talked about this when we were talking before. It just calls up everything in us as dudes.
Yeah. It does.
That whole fighter.
Mm-hmm.
In a good way. We were born to be warriors.
Mm-hmm.
We just were, and this wussification of society.
Oh my God. That's a good word. It's true.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm a firm believer that things like judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu should be jiu-jitsu. They should be taught in schools. Guys and girls both should do them.
What's that stuff they do in Israel? What's that called?
Krav Maga.
Krav Maga, man, that's wild. I tell you, that's tough stuff.
It's something.
Yeah.
One of the first true men in Hollywood was what's his name? The guy who could dance too.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
No. Oh, way back when.
Way back when. Okay.
Errol Flynn.
Jimmy Cagney.
Cagney.
He was the first person long before James Bond. He did the karate stuff. And there's a great movie called Blood on the Moon where he's fighting this Japanese guy. It's really cool because he was actually really short. Yeah. And they got this super tall Japanese guy. So it was hysterical. This short white guy fighting.
It had to be hard to find.
And he beats him using karate. So it's a great movie. It's like the late 30s.
He just kicked him in the legs repeatedly. It was like Kyokushin. It was like Kyokushin karate.
To some old school. But the other thing is like going back even to the time period you write a lot about, and that you kind of the classics, right? I mean, Greco, like there's a statue. It's my favorite statue, and it's this guy sitting there, and he's just fully naked and everything. and that's not why I like it.
That's why you
But-
like it.
Yeah, no,
No, no, yeah.
I
Sorry.
anticipated it coming. Anthony. I got you.
Yeah. He was like, "Whoop-ah!" Block that.
But it's an old ancient Greek statue, and his ear is just gnarled up with like
Oh,
cauliflower
yeah.
ear.
Boxer. There is a
Cauliflower
famous one. I think it's
Yeah.
called Boxer. Yeah.
And it's like, and
Yeah.
it's that, but it's that. I mean, like literally, like Greco-Roman
Cauliflower
wrestling.
ear.
Yeah, it was like. I mean, that was practice for the battlefield. Like the things that worked in, in literal mortal combat. Was grappling and was and it was just that amazing art and martialness that came out of that. It was just it's still
That was the
it's still
beauty, the
effective today.
balance. You see, for the ancient Greeks, the ideal of beauty was not necessarily the woman like it is more recently. It was the male athlete in perfect harmony and balance and body. That was their sort of ideal of beauty. And they made the gods in the image of that, the Olympic athlete. We've
seem to
lost
like
that understanding of I mean, they started the Olympics because they understood that all of that stuff and the gymnastics that goes with it, all of that, it shows a harmony of the body. That's like a harmony of the soul.
And they like the chunky women. They like the chunky women too back then.
Yeah, that's a little bit different,
A lot of places we could go with that. There's a lot of places we could go. That is actually a really good segue, Dr. Marcos, into talking about your new book, The Myth Made Fact, Reading Greek and Roman Mythology Through Christian Eyes.
Good
Talk
stuff.
to us about that.
Good stuff. I published a book a while back called From Achilles to Christ, Why Christians Should Read the Pagan Classics, right? And that focused on the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, the Greek tragedies. This time around, I said, I want to go deeper. Let's go to the real raw material that's the behind Homer and Virgil and Dante and all these people. Let's go to the source. And, I'm Greek. All four of my grandparents were born in Greece. So these are not only my stories because I'm a man of the West. I mean, I'm actually Greek. These are my stories. And so I grew up with them. I'm one of those Christians, sometimes I grow spiritually more by reading a Greek myth than reading a devotional. Because I'm getting down.
I said you're banned. You are banned from all Baptist life.
We're gone. Everybody's going to cancel me now. I mean, it's just going to be rap, It's crazy, right? It's like,
The Southern Baptist Convention has canceled you.
but they're coming along, I mean, my book, Why Christians Should Read the Pagan Classics, that was published by InterVarsity about 12 years ago. They might not have published that 20 years ago.
Right.
I did a book called On the Shoulders of Hobbits, The Road to Virtue with Tolkien and Lewis. That was published by Moody.
That's
Moody
awesome.
wouldn't have done that 10 years before that. All that magic and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So we are learning slowly.
Yeah.
We're starting to realize, that what does general revelation mean?
Yeah.
God speaks through creation. He speaks through our conscience. He speaks through reason, through imagination. We're all made in God's image. I mean, we're fallen, but the fall did not erase the imago Dei, the image of God. It's still there, and it still speaks through. I mean, there are bits and pieces of truth. Think about the Magi, right? The Magi weren't Christian, but they weren't Jewish. They were pagans.
I thought they were Baptist.
No, but there you go. Yeah,
they were.
No, that was John the Baptist. You're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was John.
My bad.
So these guys, right? They don't have access to the Bible, right? The prophets, they've got the stars. They study the stars with their limited wisdom. And where did the star lead them? Led them to the Christ child. When they got there, they could have said, "Is
So
that?"
amazing back in December. Wasn't that Christmas star amazing?
Oh,
was
I forget
beautiful.
what you mean. Yes, yeah.
That was beautiful.
Just like mind-boggling. I had no idea. Everybody kept talking about it. I was like, all right, that's gonna be cool.
Everything coming in, and
And then I
that,
walked out and was like, holy smokes.
yeah. When you look at, it, I remember that sending an email. Go out and look. Go out and look, because the star of Bethlehem was probably not like a supernova or a comet.
Right.
They often use the word star for a conjunction of different planets and stars, all of which are meaningful.
Yeah.
And if you think the idea that meaning is written in the stars is a pagan idea or a New Age idea, it's in the Bible, right? The Star of Bethlehem. When Jesus was crucified, there was an earthquake. There was an eclipse of the sun. I mean, it's not that the heavens control us. That's not that astrology idea.
Right.
but they do influence us. And God writes messages in the heavens, sometimes too big for us to see. And we saw some of those,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, that is just part of the Bible. It's just, see, we live in an age where we've separated everything. Either it's completely literal or it's completely figurative. It's either history or myth. We can't understand how the Garden of Eden story can be true, but it's also a myth, because it's a myth about origins, about why things are the way they are. We need to learn to read like the medievals did, where we could see the literal and the figurative all together and not make it an either or kind of choice, which is what we do.
There's like so much there to unpack. One of the issues probably with why we struggle with that in our culture, at least American culture, we got friends who are listening around the world in different places. Reading has like gone out the window in America. You know, people could barely read the cereal box, much less understand this deeper stuff. And you're so true, like the compartmentalization. You know, I had somebody ask me, and I may have shared this before, fairly recently. You know, they know I'm a believer, and they asked me, they're like, how do you do all that supernatural stuff? How do you accept that? And I said, you do realize that we're two piles of dirt having this conversation, right?
Yeah.
Everything's supernatural, buddy. There is no, it's all supernatural. Everything. The fact that we even are having this conversation is supernatural. So that's why I don't have any problem believing it at all.
Well, there's this thing too that's happening, and there's starting to be this, I guess, misappropriated or misplaced fascination with the supernatural, with the, you know, the UFO stuff coming out, and the mission of the U.S. government, and there's a lot more of this is becoming mainstream and acceptable to do. And I think, you know, I think that's a good thing, because it opens conversations for Christians to have with people. But if they don't know how, that's why I think, you know, Dr. Heiser's work so great, is because it gives you a framework to go, this is how we have the conversation. This is how we can have those conversations. And even, because people are just like you said, like the stars and those kind of things speak to the glory of God. But people will, as they've done throughout history, turn that to worship the creation instead of the creator. And I think that's what's going to eventually happen on a global scale, with this turn to this supernatural, this paranormal, leaning towards most people.
The biggest danger of this whole new age occult, whatever you want to call it, is they have accepted a lie. And if something is spiritual, it must be good.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's good spirituality, what we call angels, and there's bad spirituality, fallen angels that we call devils.
Yeah.
So you don't just open your mind to anything spiritual, because there is evil, dark spirituality, and we've lost our discernment. Now, of course, why do people like this kind of supernatural? Because it gives you the feeling of the supernatural without any accountability.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? As soon as you make that a personal God who has revealed himself in history, who gave us the 10 Commandments, who died and rose again, suddenly it's not just something you can play with.
Yeah.
It's something that's going to affect your behavior. C.S. Lewis said, you know, the idea of pantheism, everything's God. Isn't that the wonderful religion? It means that when the sun is shining and it's beautiful outside, it's nice to have someone to thank and praise. But when you want to do something really bad, it's nice to know the universe doesn't care.
That's fantastic.
That's true.
And we want to believe there's another dimension, or our lives are meaningless.
Right.
And as soon as that other dimension becomes personal and has some kind of claim on our life, then we want to run.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that it kind of connects to what we're talking about before the show. You're talking about like these Greek gods, these you know, Achilles, and these stories that are there, And how do you think, like, and this is kind of one of my thought process in there, is that when we go back to the Nephilim, the fall of angels that come in and had sex with women, and they created these great men of renown. Do you see a tie-in with some of the ancient Greek demigods and gods that people said these were gods, and this is tied into the Nephilim, to the fall there? Or?
I mean, it's possible, because it does say in Genesis 6, and these were the ones called the heroes, heroes of old. So it might be, or maybe an even older hero going farther back. Okay, because in the New Testament, right, what is the word for hell? Well, about half of the time, the word used is Hades, because Hades is pretty much the Greek equivalent of Sheol in Hebrew, right? And Hades is not really a place of actual punishment and suffering. Hades is just sort of a place of misery. It's a place with no hope, where people just wander around in a daze, right? It's kind of like living in Detroit, okay?
Right.
So
we just lost that one listener.
Yeah, the one person. But what are you going to do?
Oh,
anyway,
my gosh.
So about half the time, the New Testament uses Hades, right? Coming out of what we call the Septuagint, right? The Greek translation. The other half, often Jesus, when he's talking about hell, he uses that word Gehenna, right? Gehenna was the place where they would sacrifice their babies, put them through the fire to Baal, and the baby corpses would burn. And later it was a sort of burning garbage. So it's a perfect image for the flames of hell. But there's one time, and one time only, when a different word is used for hell. And it's in 1 or 2 Peter, when it talks about the rebellious angels were confined to hell. The word is Tartarus.
Tartarus.
Only one time it's used, right? And in Greek mythology, there is a real, beneath Hades is a place called Tartarus. That's where those real bad sinners are punished. Like some of you guys have heard of Tantalus, who did an evil thing. And so whenever he reaches up to the grapes, they blow away. And whenever he reaches down to drink, it goes out. So the word, our word tantalize comes from all these things. And that's where the rebellious Titans.
I was about to say, that's where the Titans went.
The rebellious Titans were locked up. If you remember the Disney movie Hercules, that's where those Titans are. You see the little crisscrossing lines of energy, and Hades wants to free them. They're down in Tartarus. And it's amazing that the one time, and when I was a kid, I used to think that was a reference to the angels that, rebelled with Satan and fell, right? Paradise Lost. But the more I look at it, it really seems to be a reference to those sons of God that slept with the daughters of men and gave birth to the Nephilim. It seems much more likely to be that. And so, again, we're
and in a Disney movie, they were wanting to free them. Just like, that's why I was like,
Way to go, Disney.
and
thumbs up, guys.
Now, Noble Mark Anthony, you said you're a fan of Percy Jackson. Isn't it always the Titans? What's his name? Kronos?
That's right. It was Kronos,
Rescue? So they've got that same idea. That's a big thing in Greek mythology. So we do see an overlap here between these gods and demigods and what they're doing. And see, basically the way I did a whole interview with Michael Heiser about Paradise Lost and what Milton brings to it. And Milton does something really neat. He treats the gods a little bit differently. The real bad gods of Babylon, Egypt, the Philistines, the Phoenicians, the Persians, the Assyrians, he gives his demons the names of those demonic gods. But he treats the Greco-Roman and Norse gods as being in a sort of twilight, in a sort of cold region. They're certainly not good, but they're not as actively evil. And Michael Heiser has made very powerful arguments that after Babel and the flood, the flood in Babel, he allows the different spiritual beings to watch over the different nations, and many of them go bad. Some are worse, some are better, and then God keeps for himself Israel, the Jewish people. He will be their God. And all of these things, again, suggest a dimension that keeps peeking through in a lot of the myths that I write about in the book.
It's interesting that you referenced Dr. Heiser's work. I obviously, anybody who watches or listens to the show knows he's a friend of the show as well, and we've had him on a couple of times.
He wouldn't say that. We say
I'm saying it. So, Dr. Heiser, you're a friend whether you want to be or not.
Woman, huh? That's what I
Exactly.
He could be in our club. But I was watching an interview with him today. It was really fascinating. It was a short little snippet, probably a longer interview, but a gentleman was talking with him about how the Bible, in his understanding, teaches that there, are multiple Elohim.
Yes.
There's only one Yahweh.
Yeah.
But there are multiple Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having this conversation recently with one of my spiritual mentors from way back. He discipled me in Christ for pretty much my whole life. And I was talking to him about Dr. Heiser's work, and I was like, I feel like you almost can't have a full understanding of what was happening in the ancient world and the spiritual warfare that was taking place between, the forces of evil and Yahweh as the Messiah, as was the way he was being prepared for Messiah to come. You almost can't understand that without understanding that work and what was really happening. So often we, in Christian circles, at least growing up where I grew up, is where those were idols. Those were idols. No, those were idols dedicated to a very real entity who had very real power and had to be checked by the one true God who allowed them to have power. Yeah, it's really fascinating.
And one thing you'll like, this is another guy stuff thing. I love how he explains that one of the reasons the prophecies had to be so riddling about the crucifixion and the resurrection was to fool the fallen Elohim. Yeah. So they wouldn't try to stop the crucifixion. And so in helping to push it forward, they fell right into the trap. I just think that's cool. Yeah. That's really a cool God that tricks their own game. Right? Do you remember this crazy singer named Carmen when you were a kid?
Oh, yes. We've talked about Carmen. We love you, Carmen.
Yeah, he doesn't really sing. He talks, kind of like Henry Higgins or something like that. But that guy is so cool. Do you remember that thing he did? What was it called? The Champion or the Victor?
Yeah.
He matches all the devils like, we got him, man.
We drop that in right here, just saying.
Yeah.
In vengeance, the blow of death fell Jesus to the ground. The devils roared in victory. The saints shocked and perplexed as wounds appeared upon his hands and feet. And then Satan kicked him in his side, and blood and water flowed. And they waited for the 10 count of defeat. God the Father turned his head, his tears announcing Christ was dead. The 10 count would proclaim the battle's end. Then Satan trembled through his sweat in unexpected horror. Yet, as God started the count by saying, 9. Oh yes, he has won. He has won. He's alive forevermore.
He's still around. I haven't seen him in a while.
He is. He beat cancer. Right? I mean, he's.
Oh, really? Oh, so he's still going. He's tough.
I think so. He's still out there. John loves him. He's one of
the
John's
OG
favorites.
Carmen, man. OG. Yeah, I give him his props.
Well, my favorite what he ever did was Mission 316.
And it's like, whoa, what's that? What's that rumbling going on there?
Yeah.
Whoa, ah! And they just realized that they've fallen right into the hands and they've been destroyed. Right? And just wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. And in a way that's true. Maybe we're coming back to the old Carmen stuff of, there's real spiritual warfare. The only thing that I think Carmen got wrong, he had a video called Invitation by a Witch.
The Witch's Invitation.
It's like,
my favorite.
That's the only problem. If a witch invites you to her house, you do not go there. You invite her to your house, to your church. But that was just one. That was only one thing. Like, no, be careful. I mean, the evil does have power. So what do we pray? Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
When I was a youth pastor years ago at one particular church, I had a little girl come to my youth group who was Wiccan. She claimed to be Wiccan, and I was teaching, and she, like, right in the middle of everything, she raises her hand and is like, I just want you to know I don't believe that because I'm Wiccan. She actually said that, and everybody looked at her. This is like rural North Carolina. Everybody's like looking at her like they're just waiting for her to burst into flame. And I told her, I was like, well, you know what? Thanks for sharing that. I want you to keep coming. Just keep coming.
Yeah, you come here. We're not going to go there, but you come here.
I kid you not. This girl got saved. She and her mother did as well. And so that was a pretty cool awesome thing to see.
See, the only thing, like, with that Witch's Invitation, my favorite songs, and when I was growing up, from Carmen, one of the only song I like from Carmen. But it was and the only thing that made me mad as I got older, that made me mad. But I was like, you messed up on that one, Carmen. He was like, there was Dungeons and Dragons boards everywhere. I was like, it's Dungeons and Dragons, man. It's just,
he hit you where your own individual sin, man. That's what it is. Of course, John was also playing Stairway to Heaven backwards, though.
Oh, there we go. You have to watch out.
Nobody did more for, look, I know you're Houston Baptist University, so guys at HBU, I'm going to tell you this. If you sent people out back in the 80s, this is the truth. No one did more for rock music sales in the 80s than Baptist preachers.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, I see what you mean.
If you play it backwards, I'm like, really? Man, I need to hear that.
Like if I want to get fish out of the pond, I'm going to put "Do Not Fish" signs all over the place, and the fish are going to keep coming, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was crazy. Just like nobody would have gone to see The Last Temptation of Christ. It wasn't even that good of a movie, but we made so much of a stink. Everybody went to see it because they thought, oh, there's something wild there. That's why, in France, there's very little problem with alcoholism because the kids learn to drink wine at home. They learn a proper use of it instead of demonizing it so that they have to go and, hide somewhere, And, man, it's just, but, again, we don't, we lack the true male role model to tell you how to handle things, how to be a man. We're losing that. I mean, they've destroyed the Boy Scouts.
Oh, yeah.
Destroyed it. The one place where boys are allowed to be boys and encouraged to be boys, and they've destroyed it.
Yep.
I mean, it's what's happening is just, oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
Just, if you will, Dr. Marcos, I want to bring you back to your book a moment. Kind of take us through just a quick, or however, or long, whatever you want to do. Take us through through the. You've talked about the premise. Take us a little bit through, the exposition and how you walk through this process of explaining why we as Christians should be concerned about the pagan gods. Why we can learn
and the backstory. Like you said, something that was really interesting. Like to hear the behind story of why that really sparked some interest in me. Like explain that as well. Like you're going to the behind story of Ulysses and all these things.
The original why things are the way they are, because you see the myths are the raw material of literature, art, music, and they were until very recently. I mean, it starts to change maybe with the Impressionists. They're focusing more on nature and stuff. But, throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, so much of art is either based on the Bible or it's based on these myths. And sometimes they sort of overlap, right? So you might have Samson, but he might be depicted almost like he's Hercules or vice versa or something like that. So we're getting back to the origin stories, why things are the way they are, where do we come from, where are we going? How do we restore order when it's been taken down? So that Odysseus in the Odyssey is a messianic hero because he's coming back to an Ithaca, his island home that has been turned upside down, and he is restoring order. And he's bringing Judgment Day. There's a real Judgment Day that he's bringing, right? Sometimes it's a hero like Achilles who's struggling with his own mortality. Well, we all have to struggle with our mortality, but Achilles should have been a god. He was supposed to be the son of Zeus, but instead he was the son of a mortal man named Peleus and a divine mother named Thetis, one of the goddesses of the sea. And he struggles with those things. What does it mean to be a hero? The great heroes, Jason, right? That's the one who found the golden fleece, or Perseus, who cut off the head of Medusa and saved Andromeda, right? Or Theseus, who killed the Minotaur, right? These are all Hercules, who did the 12 labors. And what I do in the book is I go through 50 different myths. I kind of link them together. There's one section that's all the origin myths. There's one section that's about a certain tragic house that everything goes bad, right? Other places I even look at some of the myths of Plato, because Plato often tells myths to illustrate his philosophy. But in each of the 50 chapters, the first part is me retelling the story like a storyteller, because we need to hear this. And any parent needs to read that out loud to their children, because we need to hear it again and not just get a synopsis on Wikipedia. Then there's a
That
second.
could be wrong.
It could be wrong. That's true. Yeah. And then I interpret it. What does this myth teach us? And, linking to Christianity too, but what is it? But then there's an application section where I come up with all sorts of questions, not simple questions, complex questions. So this can be used by teachers in a classical Christian school, homeschooling moms. It can be used in a Sunday school class. You might be part of a book reading club where you get together and discuss these issues. You can read the book devotionally. 1 or 2 myths at night or in the morning, where you're studying and thinking. And of course, every chapter has lots of notes with historical background and lots of Bible verses that you can meditate on and reflect on. And how can this story draw you into a deeper understanding of faith, right? The cover image, and it's a beautiful cover image, right? It's Daedalus and Icarus, right? Most people know the story of Daedalus and Icarus. They wanted to escape from the labyrinth, and the only way to escape was to fly. And so Daedalus, the great artificer, made a wooden frame. He gathered feathers from birds. He used wax to affix them. And he made a pair for himself and his young son Icarus. And he said, Icarus, when you fly behind me, take a middle course. Don't go too low, or the moisture will pull you down from the ocean. Don't go too high, or the sun will melt the wax. But the little boy didn't listen. First, he went too low. He almost got dragged down to the ocean. And then he pulled out, soaring higher and higher, until the sun melted the wax. The feathers fell one by one, and he plummeted into the sea to his death. Now, I like this because this story reminds us that when God gives us commandments, when he gives us the law, he's not doing it to spoil our fun. He's doing it to keep us safe. Daedalus tells him that because when he violates that law, he brings about his own destruction. We need to stop seeing thou shalt not as a negative. Thou shalt not is protecting us from self-destruction. And
which we're really good at.
We're very good at it, right? And here, just a good example of this is the 10 Commandments, the law, right? The law was not given to a group of free men to enslave them. It was given to a group of former slaves to allow them to be free, virtuous, self-regulating people. Our democracy only works as long as we are virtuous, morally self-regulating citizens. When we cease to be able to do that, everything will fall apart. Okay,
which we're getting close to.
Right? During the summer, they were giving the not welfare. What's it called? The
stimulus checks.
The stimulus, and not just the checks, but they were giving money. What do you call that? Unemployment insurance.
Oh yeah.
They were doubling it for a while. So literally, you made more money staying home than going to work. I mean, what are we doing? Okay, we're just allowing a sort of
teaching people to rely upon the government.
That's it. Okay, we call it the liberal plantation. We'll keep you there forever. And it's terrifying. They do not want these people, these immigrants, these minorities, they don't want them to succeed. They want them to stay on the dole forever. And is it Georgia, Anthony?
Yeah.
You're from Georgia.
I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the voter block. That
I don't want to think about that, right? But I mean, more and more, we're seeing it in places like Tennessee and Kentucky and all. And these people are they're just giving them enough money to stay forever on their drugs. Often they're not cocaine. It's often, what do you call that? Opioids.
Yeah.
Opioids, scripts.
Right? And it's like, let's just
hillbilly heroin
forever. Okay. And I will say this, okay, that at least those hillbillies, they just destroy themselves. They don't get into gangs. They're not pushing.
Right.
I mean, it's not like what's happening in California where they've completely thrown out our There's like just enough Judeo-Christian legacy left up in the Adirondacks and in the backcountry where they can destroy themselves. But generally speaking, they're not selling drugs to make kids into addicts, right? But you see how over in places like California, where they've taken away the virtue and only given them, environmentalism and multiculturalism. You're having gangs. I mean, it's scary. And so,
well, that is exactly what I was talking with you guys before we started recording. I was talking with a great friend of mine, an African American lady today, and we were talking about some of the cancel culture stuff as it relates to things in the Black community. And I asked her opinion, and she pointed out, we were specifically referencing one thing. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to put mine or her conversation completely out there. But, she was saying, why are they worried about that now? They haven't worried about it in 100 years.
That's right, yeah.
Why are they worried about it now? And I told her, I said, it's just distraction. And so much of what is done by those in charge, we are chasing a bunny now, is really distraction. These problems that exist within these communities, they're we have an issue with illiteracy. We have issues with fatherlessness. We have issues with, drugs, gangs, violence. You know what? The root of all that is, it's a picture of a lady on a pancake box. That's what it is.
There we go. Yep.
That's what it is. That's it. Yep. If we fix that, we will fix that. No, guys. No.
I once saw a cartoon. I wish I kept it, where there was whatever 5th grade classroom, and the people are going wild. The kids are writing on the thing. They're jumping all over, and there's one little kid in the corner reading his Bible. And it's clear that an administrator has walked in and he's pointing at the kid and saying, "You're the cause of this breakdown." Right? But I mean, this is what they're saying. I mean, really, it's like the public schools seem to think if they can remove every single shred of our Judeo-Christian heritage, suddenly it will be a utopia. No, it will be completely destroyed. But
well, that's what we're seeing.
It's almost an insanity. I mean, it's a denial of reality, right? When they cancel the police, it is the minority people living in the inner city that start to die because they have nobody to protect them. Right. That's killed more people than any. All of that long list, and it's not a very long list, of the minority people that were killed by police. Just over a few days, more people were killed in Chicago and places like that because the police were removed. So what are we doing? It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. So destructive.
And we talked about this kind of a little bit of a trajectory shift. You talked about like the law, like how we look at these law as like, oh, this is just God, trying to mess my fun up. And even in Christianity, that's starting to. I mean, it's been a while this has been happening, but this hyper grace movement of we got to unhitch from the law. That's the Old Testament mean God, and we're under the cool feathered hair, freaking Paisley wearing Jesus time. And so it's this. It seems to be like this, even in Christian circles, that this movement towards everything's okay, everything it's all grace, it's complete grace. And you go, well, God gave those laws for a reason. We're not bound on the laws, but Jesus actually elevated them. Jesus didn't take away the law. He said, the law says this, but I tell you, if you do this, he elevated the laws, and he didn't do away with them. So it's just interesting to see what we're seeing even in Christianity with the bringing in of homosexuality, of accepting promiscuity, of all these things that are there, divorce, everything that comes along with going against the law of God is being accepted in a lot of mainstream churches because they say, oh, that's back then. We're not under that. We're under grace, so everything's cool. And it just seems weird that that's happening all at the same time as the lawlessness is happening in America and other worlds.
It seems almost strategic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And yeah, it's funny, man, you say that, because I was thinking about this, just the other day as well. We do want the church to be a place where anybody feels they can come. Come as you are, right? But we have to be honest with people about their sin and love, because it's sin is sin. But we've lost that ability, or in a lot of places, to do that. We're so hyped about having a crowd, which COVID put a kibosh on that. We're so hyped about having a crowd that so often the church is not being completely honest with people, and we're going to answer for that. And we talk about these issues within these communities. There's only one answer. The gospel is the answer. The gospel is the answer in the hollers of West Virginia or Harlem. Yeah. It doesn't. That's alliteration. You like that?
Oh, look at you!
Look at that. I'm flexing for the for the English professor. But seriously, it's it's the only answer. It's the only answer, and there's not a social program that's going to do it. I mean, the church should be spearheading this stuff. We should have always been spearheading this stuff.
We were. We were.
Yeah, we quit. And look what happened. So
Yeah.
Time to rise up, church. It's time to rise up.
And remember, the gospel doesn't mean anything till you know what the problem is that makes it necessary.
Exactly.
So if we soft pedal,
Yeah.
we've got Joel Osteen over here at Lakewood. I'm in Houston, Texas, and he does present the gospel, but he downplays sin so much that you don't understand why you need it. You know, it just becomes self-help.
You're okay.
That's life now. If you don't understand the problem, and you're not loving somebody. If somebody comes to you and says, "I'm a drug addict," you say, "Well, that's okay. I love you. Keep going." No, I love you. You're valuable. God can change you, but don't stay in that condition.
Yeah.
When Jesus forgives the woman caught in adultery and then says to her, "Go thy way and sin no more," he's actually freeing her. He's freeing her to live a life not of sin and bondage. That's actually freeing. To tell her, "Go back and do it," that's fine. What do you mean that's fine? It's not fine.
Yeah, he just, "Oh, my grace is good. Keep going."
I got you. You covered.
Yeah.
I'm wherever Joel Osteen was right then. Some shade just like cast over him.
His back started itching a little bit. He's like, "Oh,
yeah,
what is that?"
He's like sitting by his gold pool or whatever, and it's like shade suddenly. Shade.
Your
best life.
Smiley. I tell you, I tell everybody, if your best life is now, you bound for hell. It's like, if this is your, is it?
If this is my best life, man, I want to talk to management.
You remember Keith Green?
Yes, I love Keith Green.
He was great. Keith Green has a song, "I can't wait to get to heaven when you wash away all my tears." In 6 days, you created everything, but you've been working on heaven 2,000 years. And he talks in the beginning. He's like, Bible says God created the world in 6 days, and Jesus has been preparing a place for us since he left 2,000 years ago. Well, man, we're living in a garbage can, is what he said.
Yeah.
To that, if you remember that little sharing in that song. But there was something prophetic about him. It's so sad he died young.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have his book, No Compromise, on my shelf.
Oh, yeah, No Compromise, yeah.
So here's a question I'm gonna throw at you there, Dr. Lewis, and if you don't want to answer it because of your tenure at the college,
which is really hard to come by these days. They're all about them adjuncts.
So, as a literary professor, as a Bible scholar, what do you think of Genesis 1? Is it poetic literature? Is it literal? Is it do you think it's a mixture? What do you think of do you think the world was created in 6 literal days, or do you think it's poetic of God saying, "I did it"?
I gravitate towards a younger earth, but I don't think Okay, I believe that you can have a biblical view of inerrancy, that you can believe the Bible is the inspired, inerrant word of God. But I still think you can read Genesis 1 in a more poetic way that allows for days that are whatever, millions of years or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
I would distinguish that, however, from Genesis 2 and 3. I mean, you really need a literal historical Adam and Eve, or Christianity doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. I mean, there are mythic elements to the story of the fall, right? Because it is an origin story. But you're like you said, I mean, remember, what does it say in Genesis? Okay, God formed the man out of the dirt, right? He actually formed us. But it talks about the ground giving birth to the different creatures according to their kind. Okay. First of all, we need to understand that the word evolution is a very slippery word. Okay. If you ask me if I believe in evolution, I'll say, well, what do you mean by evolution? If you mean that species are able to adapt to survive, then of course I believe that, because I believe God created every kind with adaptation strategies. Yeah. But if you say to me that one species can become a whole nother species by time and chance, that's nonsense. It doesn't work, okay? And it's never been shown to work. It just doesn't work, okay? That's not what we see in the fossil record or anything else. So I think it's possible that maybe there was a long period of creation, but the creation of man is clearly a special creation of God making us and breathing life into us. Now, gentlemen, I think the only big problem with theorizing perhaps an older creation and older animals and whatnot is that it allows for what's called, fancy word now, pre-fall predation, right? I don't think that's a problem. I think it's only a problem to us because we are ridiculously sentimental about animals to the point of being childish. Okay, okay. But not, we don't torture animals. That's wrong. But they are animals. Okay, and I don't see that as a problem.
Organic robots.
Yeah, there we go. That's right. What's Descartes, right? Enemy. But so I think it's. I don't know. Okay, I mean, but when we're talking about, I don't see evidence that man has been around here that long. I just don't see compelling evidence that maybe we're 10,000 years old rather than 6,000. However you want to count those genealogies. But I don't see man as being around more than about 10,000, certainly not more than 20,000. Just look at the evidence we have.
Well, I was going to say, even secular historians have to admit that it appears that mankind, basically, if you look at the record, like just appeared, like all over, like, like it was like all over at once. So you don't see a slow ascent, really, if you're honest about the record. And I mean, come on, like, we know man. Do you honestly think that man would be here that long without giving some semblance of him being here?
Yeah.
I mean, like we can't even like go to the bathroom without taking a selfie.
Oh, there we go. We would have been devoured by the big animals long ago, right?
Oh my gosh! I mean,
now that they're really studying the DNA, what do they call her? Mitochondrial Eve, and they're able to go back suddenly, and they don't want to admit this, But when we were kids, they were telling us man is millions and millions of years old. Yeah. Now they're saying, well, maybe he's 40 or 50,000 years old. Okay, I'm sorry, folks, but 50,000.
It's a big difference in those years.
To 6,000 years, the very traditional biblical view, than it is to millions of years. Yeah. And they act like, oh, we always do this. What do you mean you always do this? You said millions of years all of a sudden. And you know what? If they are fair to their own, okay. Evolution works on this idea called uniformitarianism, that things are the same. Okay, that's how they do this half-life and all this other stuff, right? Well, guess what? If you stay true to that belief, right, we know that our DNA is sort of getting slowly corrupted as we move along because of mutations. Well, you know what? I'm starting to say, oh my gosh, if you are really fair, then it may be a fact that Adam and Eve are less than 10,000 years, because we would be even further. We would be all messed up with more.
We'd be 2 feet tall and
that's
4 feet wide.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, oh my gosh,
That's where the aliens come in.
So I mean, It's getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
I'm reading evolution.
Well, you joke, John, but that's where they account for some of their nonsense. Is and I know you're not totally joking. Probably is some of that Prometheus type.
Yeah, idea.
Interference. The aliens like stepped in,
seeded stuff.
Yeah, they accelerated the situation.
Well, see, and that's the thing is that I always like when we have conversations with people like Dr. Marcos and Dr. Heiser is like you start
people
seeing
smarter than us.
Exactly, way smarter than us. But it's one of the things that you start seeing is the things that they're saying about that science is even trying to say now, like, oh, there could have been seeded, that things have interfered and changed DNA. And you go, where do we see that from a biblical worldview? Where do we see that happening when the fallen principalities started interfering with the human line?
Yep.
We start seeing that, like, okay, it could be that is, but the world's believing the lie, and we go, this is what's actually happening. And so anyway, it's just interesting to see, how that's going to work. It's going to work as science plays out and as Christianity continues to prove to be true. Throughout the years, it's just going to be interesting to see kind of how that lays out and what the lie they're going to continue to believe is, and how big of a lie it's going to be.
I mean, because we all know they probably got a Minotaur in a jar somewhere.
I want one.
People are saying, reading books where we branched off from the chimpanzees like 100,000 years ago. What? All of a sudden it's that close. I'm sorry, this doesn't work, folks. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay?
What I want to know is why we still got chimpanzees in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, why don't
did they not come to work that day?
And why did evolution stop with us? Why didn't it continue?
Yeah.
What? It's like it's everything is building up to us and it stops.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for a whale to walk out of the water and be like, "What?"
Oh man! And look at our human body. There's no reason why we can't live to 600, 700, 800 years, right? Our body, made everything when we were a baby. Why can't it make it? It's almost like something is in our body that's like a time bomb that just suddenly starts to kill itself off. Why? Yeah. I mean, the effects of sin, and we're saying with spiritual forces. We should be able to live longer.
That's the thing too that we have conversations. I always like to bring it back and go back to the Genesis story. Is talking about life, like you said about animal predation and those kind of things before the fall. Well, and if and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the text, exactly. It talks about. There was death because even in the garden, because Adam and Eve had to eat something, and they were eating
You're right, yeah.
bacterial, and that's death, and they had to chew something down, and even the reason they got kicked out of the garden and had the seal put up is if they went back and ate of the tree of life, they would continue to live forever. So there had to be something like the tree of life seemed to be, whether it's metaphorical or whether it's whatever it is, they had to do something.
Essential oils.
Yeah, it's just lavender.
Essential oils.
It's just a little drip of lavender. But they had to.
I love lavender.
they had to like go back and actually physically eat that to continue that life kind of thing. And so anyway, it just seems that it just interesting to see like how that worked about life and why we don't continue to live for hundreds of years like we did, before. Is it because of that?
Things change after the flood. Things change after the flood. There seems to have been a canopy before the flood that protected us from rays and stuff like that.
The vapor sphere.
Yeah, that's right. And now, of course, we at Guy Stuff, we may be a little bit worried by the Garden of Eden does seem to have been a vegetarian place. But we also know that in the Garden of Eden, the fruit tasted like filet mignon.
Oh, yes,
so
exactly.
we know the truth of that story.
Yeah, absolutely.
That story.
I'm pretty sure that the tree of life was actually a bacon tree.
Oh, man, there we go. It's a bacon tree. Just pull it on down, man.
It was definitely not kosher.
Jonathan, you love the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Read the Silmarillion.
Really?
Death is God's gift to men. It's his gift that we die, because we're not chained forever to the cycles of this world. That the elves are immortal, but they're not eternal. The life of the elf is tied to the life of the earth, and when the earth is gone, they're gone. But we, because of the gift of death, will escape from the cycles of the world to something that is more than memory, as Aragorn says to Arwen as he's about to die. Only if you read Appendix A and B of Lord of the Rings. You have to read the appendices. Yeah. But, that's it. We will not be forever bound. And that's why the elves are always sad and melancholy and always trying to
Bunch of emo kids.
Yeah, they really are. That's good. You know, they have oddly no hope.
Yeah.
But we will
They're like
transcend, we will
melancholy.
escape this world to something greater. Now, here's the thing. We were probably always destined to be in the New Jerusalem with God, but because we chose the hard way, now we've got to go through a terrible death and suffering to get there. Maybe Lewis says maybe it was just a natural transition. Paralandra, part of Lewis's space trilogy. The Adam and Eve figure don't fall.
Really?
And they will now kind of naturally evolve, if you will, upward without all the pain. Don't do it the hard way.
Wow.
That would have been nice.
Yeah. Can we have that version, God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. You know, we've lost a lot of people this last year, in our family, close to our family, friends of family, and you know, the older you get, the more gray you get in your beard.
There it is.
The more Earth. Life on Earth. I mean, you love your family, you want to be there for your family, you want to build a legacy, but the more life on Earth loses its luster. You know, you really, I mean, I was telling John, you know, we did judo randori, like bull in the pen the other day. Man, I'm still hurting. I'm sitting here right now hurting. Like you know, my body is not like it was 20 years ago. Go ahead, say it, John, because I'm old as
dirt. You dirt.
Yep. I actually turned 48 on Sunday.
Oh, happy birthday!
So, that's right, Valentine baby.
But 57, I got you guys by.
I accept all major credit cards, and I'll send you my Venmo. You know, I can see that though. You know that the reality that death is a gift, is in a sense, it's a gift. It's a release to the believer.
Yeah, for the believer.
And
yeah.
I saw that with my mom. My mom, we'd gone 6 years in March, and you know, when she was in those last days, she kept saying, "I want to go home," and my dad erroneously thought that she was talking about home, and I was like, "No, Dad. She's not talking about Lakewood Drive. She's talking about home."
Yeah.
So I didn't think it would end this way, Gandalf.
End.
Death is
such
not
a good
the end
quote.
of the journey.
Yes.
It's just another part of the journey. What does he say? What is it? The dark rain curtain of the world is rolled back.
And then sea of glass.
Silver glass.
Yes.
John,
what Gandalf? What do you see? White shores. Beyond that, a distant, far green country under a swift sun.
I know, right? I say it's amazing. Now, see, here's what you don't know, Dr. Marcos, and my funeral plan has been written, and this knucklehead right here, part of his job at my funeral, if I go first, is actually to read that quote.
And my daughter's already been told that at my funeral she's going to sing Into the West.
I'm telling you, man, we talked about that last time. Like I still like I hear that song and I just like like a little girl. I can't even sing it.
So many and people know if they come to my house for the 12-hour marathon, the movie is not over until we've listened to the song and we've seen all the credits with the line drawings and stuff. You don't get up and leave until then. Okay, now you can talk. All right.
We actually make lemnis bread.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
We found a recipe. I sent John a picture years ago before we even started the podcast. We found a recipe online and made the bread to watch the movie with. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
My son plays the trumpet, and he's also got a kind of a shofar, the ram's horn, not the big one. And when we watch it, whenever they sound the horn of Gondor, he pulls it out and he plays it, and everybody jumps.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Round sound when we watch it. It's
awesome.
real. It
That's
blows.
awesome. That's awesome.
You know?
Like last night, I was listening to it and everything. I was just and my wife wanted to listen to something else, and so it's the point she wanted to stop it was right when the ships roll in with Aragorn, and they're like, and Éomer's like sitting there like he's like defiant, like this is where I went my last stand. I'm gonna die, you know, this and do things that people will sing about, even though there's nobody left us to talk about it. And all of a sudden the flag unfurls and the king. I'm like so excited. And Chris is like, "Can we listen to something else?" And I'm like, "Okay, love." It's
just like, you just don't get it. This is the moment.
Yeah,
it's a guy thing.
Every time Tolkien read The Lord of the Rings, what brought him to tears was the sound of the horns of Rohan. That's what got him. And they show up always. People show up in the last minute and all that sort of stuff.
I love the Riders of Rohan, man. That's such a great scene. Yeah. They come right. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Man. So a little transition to another book or another movie we should talk about, and that kind of ties into your book. And so one of my favorite movies is Troy, right?
Oh, that's a good movie. And they changed things, but as a movie, it's a good movie.
So that's what I'm talking about. Like, I've never read the actual account and those kind of things. So, like, what are some of the things that you found was accurate and was like just completely fabricated, especially with the life of Achilles?
Now they completely throw the gods out of the mix, right? In Troy, no gods. Even his mother Thetis is not a god, not a goddess. Right. But other than that, the big change is when they allow Menelaus to be killed. That's insane. Menelaus is one of the few, but that's the only time I'm like, you cannot do that. But of course, in the epic, when Paris has the one-on-one with Menelaus and Menelaus is about to kill him, the only reason he survives is because the goddess Aphrodite picks him up and floats him away into the bed of Helen of Troy. Well, once you throw out the gods, what are you going to do? So in the movie, Hector, played by the guy who was the Incredible Hulk in one of the movies, Hector comes out and kills Menelaus, which you simply cannot do. But other than that, they captured the intensity of Achilles. Achilles isn't in place. He's only like 20 years old in the epic. Wow. They caught that well. They caught Aias or Ajax, that big wall of the Achaeans.
Yeah, I like him. He's one of my favorites. That's my favorite Dutch soccer team too. So.
Oh, he's great. What about when the Myrmidons take the beach of Troy? Man? That's a great scene.
Oh, that was great.
Fighting and formation and stuff like that. So it does get some of it. The dynamic between Agamemnon and Achilles, it captures that well. And of course, one of the best parts of the whole movie is Peter O'Toole playing Priam, King Priam of Troy.
Yeah.
Perfect choice.
Yeah.
And also, my biggest regret, Odysseus, played by Boromir, man. Sean Bean. That was the best part of the movie. Yeah. And I wanted a movie version of the Odyssey with Sean Bean, but they didn't do it when they had the chance.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Sean Bean was awesome. He was perfect in that.
So here's a fun, utterly useless fact. I was fascinated by the weaponry. And buddy and I actually built shields like that.
Oh man, that one-on-one between Achilles and Hector at the end was a great battle.
We built spears with like padding on the end and those shields and fought with them. Yeah, just to see what it was like.
They would use their shields as weapons too. I mean, they do. Yeah. Of course, we all love that opening scene that's not in the Iliad when we first meet Achilles, and he runs up and he does this kind of twist and down he goes.
I love that.
That's cool.
Is there no one else?
Is there no one else? I tell you, one of my favorite scenes is like it's such a like, I don't know why it's my favorite scene, but it's just one of those things where after he kills Hector, Achilles kills Hector, and he's sitting there and he's just sitting over the body and he's just like talking with him, and he's like, he's just like talking like we'll see each other over the river Styx. It's like this. It was
all the men I've killed are standing there on the far bank of the river Styx. They're waiting for me. They say, "Welcome, brother." We men are wretched things. We'll meet again soon, my brother.
It was like this moment of like, just like you said, that wariness of mortality. Like, just I'm tired of being here, and this is what I'm left to do, kind of thing. And
when King Priam comes and gets the body back, it's a great scene. Peter O'Toole. I mean, that's the heart of the epic anyway. They do a good job in that. So a lot of it's done well.
Okay.
And again, it's just a good movie. It's
Yeah.
and the extended edition is better than the original.
Really?
You can buy the director's cut. Adds more of Ajax and a little bit more stuff. It's better. It's worth getting. It's maybe another 15 minutes, but it is good.
I'm gonna have to look for that.
They do a great job with the Trojan horse, which of course is not mentioned in the Iliad.
Really?
But anyway, they did a great job. And don't you love how that horse looked like it was made out of boats and things like that?
Yeah, that was great.
I mean, that was really so. Now, a lot of my fellow Greeks were very upset that Helen of Troy was played by a German actress. It was beautiful, but really. By the way, in case you didn't notice, she went on to be in the movie National Treasure.
I didn't
and
notice
Sean
it.
Penn was also in National Treasure as the bad guy.
That's true.
But that was her. And so
he's a bad guy a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's
He's
awesome.
your
That's
go-to.
Yeah. So,
Need a bad guy.
So, Dr. Lewis, as we kind of try to land the plane a little bit, we kind of been all over the place, but coming back to your book.
It's been a fun trip.
It's been a good trip. It's been a fun trip.
Been a bit trippy.
I'm waiting for the oxygen mask to drop.
This airline's too cheap for that.
Yeah, I know.
You just stick your head between your legs and kiss your butt goodbye.
You just roll it down and put your arms out and flap. It's fine. As we kind of landed down a little bit, where people can get this book? Where what is some of the final words you want to tell anybody before they buy the book? Like what is some? Just kind of tell us a little.
It really is for any age. I mean, you can read these stories to third graders, sixth graders. This is for middle school, high school, college. I made it so it's a one-stop shopping thing. It's a book, but it's also a textbook. It's beautifully illustrated. Hardcover, really, really nice. And yeah, if you go to Amazon.com, put my name in, Louis Marcos with a K, you'll find it. It's Classical Academic Press. And they never spent so much money on a book. They even got me an agent, a publicist and stuff like that, because they really want to get this out, because this is how we build bridges with these postmodern people. Yeah. They want a story. They want to be part of a story. Why are they obsessed with Marvel Comics? Why is it that we get to the end of Endgame and what happens? A hero sacrifices himself. The least likely, the most narcissistic superhero, Iron Man, right? Yeah. And yet he sacrifices himself. This is unbelievable. Everything's building up. And who is the villain? The villain is the radical environmentalist who snaps his finger and eliminates half the population. I'm sorry, but that's what they would do.
So if you've not seen Endgame, we're sorry.
Spoiler alert.
It's your own fault. You got to go to find. But I mean,
that's right. If you haven't seen it by now, whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, it's there. It's still telling the story, what they call the meta narrative, the overarching story. We need heroes that show virtue, that move beyond themselves. There is a need for the scapegoat. There is a need, and it builds up to that. And it's just amazing. I mean, these stories. By the way, did you see Black Panther? Okay. Who are the villains in Black Panther? Whether they meant to or not, the villains are the liberal progressive radicals who want to keep the blacks down forever by putting them on their liberal plantation. The good guys are the ones who want to give them employment and dignity and all that sort of stuff. So this is unbelievable when I watch this, because you have to be conservative and traditional, because we don't want politically correct fairy tales. They fall apart. You try to do it, but they fall apart. Yeah. You remember episode 3 of Star Wars? What was that called?
The Return of the Sith, or
Return of the Sith. Yeah, maybe that was. Yeah, and there's a scene where George Lucas was trying to be liberal, and he says, "Well, the Sith Lords, the Empire is given to absolutist thinking."
Yeah.
But they're wrong. George Lucas can't get away with it, because later on we find out that it's actually the evil guys who say, "Well, truth is relative and slippery." Yeah. It is the good guys who are the so. Here's Lucas trying to be progressive, and his own story will not allow him to do it, because then it doesn't become a story anymore. It ceases to be a myth. That's what these myths do, and that's why we need to study them and go back to them and find our human roots in these myths. And they're still going. They're still going strong. We'll see what they keep doing with comics, but it's in the end, it's a good message. It is a biblical message in the widest sense of the need for virtue and the need for self-sacrifice.
Comics are indeed the new mythologies. That is for sure.
Nice.
We have, wow, this has been fun, man. I really enjoyed this. Well, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you made it through the algorithm on Facebook, so
but the odds have it in your favor.
Yeah, that's right. If you are on Facebook, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and all that jazz. Pretty soon, we're going to look into buying an AM radio station so we can.
He's joking.
I'm sure. Well, I'm sure they're going cheap, right? We can buy time on an AM radio station, probably pretty cheap. But thank you, Dr. Louis Marcos, for being with us. It is always a pleasure. You are incredibly not just intelligent, but passionate about what you do and bring to the table, and it's always a very fun and challenging conversation. So, guys, thanks for joining us. We will see you again next time, if they allow us to be here on the next installment of Guy Stuff. Peace.
Keep strong.